Good morning. I'm Bill Helm, the chairman of your Board of Selectmen, joined up here by Janet Kidder and B.B. Casey, my two colleagues. Our basic plan this morning is for the first 15 minutes or so to talk to you about a couple of ordinances that will be coming up in the March timeframe. One about sewers and another about lights on the Kelsey fields. So we'll do that first, and then I would say maybe 15 minutes into the discussion here, we'll switch to talking about the police facilities and other issues that might be on your mind. So without further ado, let me introduce Nick Baer. For those of you that don't know Nick, he is our part-time health officer for the town of New London, as well as an esteemed professor at Colby-Sawyer. Nick, it's all yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm Nick Baer, the New London health officer, and I teach here at Colby-Sawyer College. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about proposed septic regulation that we're putting forward for the town. Let's see how this advances. So I guess I'd like to start saying that I really think sort of maintaining our water quality in New London is a community effort. And so this sort of stems from a lot of information that we're gathering and have explored over the last year, I guess, as a group. And so it shouldn't be a big surprise to many of you that cyanobacteria blooms are on the rise in New London, toxic blue-green algae. It is of concern in our area. And in terms of what the state has seen, we've seen increases in the advisories for cyanobacteria. It occurs, and many of you on Little Lake, Sunapee, and Pleasant Lake have experienced this in the last several years. Pleasant Lake, I think we have a mid-June cyanobacteria bloom that's been the last 3 years happening. And so why are we really trying to set up a proposal for septic regulations? It's really fourfold to really maintain our water quality for not just the lakes, but our streams, our groundwater. The infiltration from our homes goes into the groundwater and makes its way to streams and eventually to our lakes. So it's not just a lake issue. Really preventing people from coming in contact with sewage and pathogens related to sewage. Reducing the amount of nutrient loading into our systems. So our septic systems are one source of nutrient loading into these systems. And then the efforts, really one of the biggest pieces of this is really trying to educate folks. We're having a lot of folks moving to New London from elsewhere, and they may not have had to manage a septic system for their private home in the past. And so it's an opportunity for us to really have people doing best management practices for their homes and their septics. We have a lot of impacts on our landscape, but all that water, whether it's coming down as precipitation, landing on our ground or streams, is making its way into some waterway. And so what we do in that landscape will impact the water quality. Some of the things that we can have control over are things like our lawns, our farm use and care, our homes, and the impervious surfaces that we have. All of these will impact water quality. We do see, if we look at the volunteer lake assessment from the VLAP data from all our lakes and ponds, we see a slow, steady change in that water quality. Whether it's conductivity or phosphorus, we are seeing changes over time. Just this idea of the septic system for us that are very aware of it, myself on a septic system. It's part of our home maintenance, and it's something that we really should be attending to. Something that works properly, it does allow for holding back our effluent and allowing a slow percolation of water that's has time to purify its nutrients. So something that functions well works wonderfully for keeping our nutrients and our effluent out of the environment, and those that are in failure, where our system isn't working well. Let's see if this pointer works. If our sludge and sewage ends up going out into our leach field, it becomes problematic. There are other things that will lead to septic system failure, and hopefully through this effort we can do a little bit more education and outreach to folks just to talk about best management practices for your septic systems. Water quality is directly related to property value, so that's one incentive maybe. I hope there's others for caring about reducing our nutrient load into the environment. It impacts what we do in our water bodies, the recreation and use of it. It's one piece that we have control of. It's just maintaining our septic system and pumping it out regularly. And so what are we proposing? We're really just trying to have folks take time every 3 years to pump their septic system. The regulations that we have proposed have waivers built into it, so if people are in a home where they have a larger system than they are using, there's opportunities for them to apply for a waiver if they're using less than 50% of the use of that septic system over that 3-year period. But we are asking everybody to pump at least every 6 years if they qualify for that waiver. For everybody else, it would be every 3 years. Our town website already has a link here for information about the regulations we're proposing, and then a lot of information from sources from DES and other sources, just giving you best management practices and for your septic maintenance. That's our proposal. I'm happy to take questions.
So my name is Philip Brown. I live at 59 Wallula Road in New London. And I guess a couple of questions and comments. Is the proposed regulations for the entire town, whereas our sister towns of Springfield and Sunapee have regulations confined to the shoreline overlay protection area? And while I understand that it's good practice to pump a septic system, no question, your data is correct, it seems a little bit of overreach to have it in the entire town. Now, Springfield went one step further, and they nominated another area that was a watershed area, so it was more than just the shoreline overlay. Perhaps New London needs to do that. There's no, obviously, if you do the entire town, you don't have to do that. I understand that. But it seems, the question is it really something that needs to be a regulation? Sure. Is the question. I would further comment that two things tend to happen once you make something a regulation. There's a little bit of bureaucracy involved. That's not necessarily a thing that would be too difficult in this case. The way it's proposed is there would be a document that would be provided. I read the regulations that you had online. The other thing that does happen, and this happened to me down when I lived in Massachusetts, was once you make something a regulation, suddenly the cost of pumping your system goes up. All of a sudden it's like, oh, you're required to have this done. It costs more. It's happened to me in Massachusetts. Title V came in the 80s, early 90s actually. And a pumping that used to cost a couple $100 all of a sudden cost $500. And that was just for an inspection. So I question whether the need is really a need to make it town-wide. Is that really necessary? And why aren't we following what our sister towns have done? So I guess that's my question. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for the question. So to address the first part of your question about why the whole town, so my work is in aquatic ecology and hydrology when I teach, and so I would argue that any drop of water or any place on the landscape, that water is going somewhere. And so whether it's your home or my home, whatever falls there is ending up in some stream and eventually down to some other water body or into the groundwater. And many of the other towns that you mentioned, Sunapee's ruling, that was a first step for them. The hope is that they expand it beyond the shoreline. I would argue that I think the impetus for this is really looking at water quality holistically and public health holistically, not just the lakes. And so I think we all have an interest in ensuring our groundwater isn't contaminated just as much as our lake systems. And so if we go, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this since you want to take a class with me, but I mean, there's lots of data that shows, there's plenty of groundwater contamination examples in the Midwest when fertilizer application went into the groundwater and we had huge nitrogen problems. So, I mean, there's lots of examples all around the world where we have contamination of water challenges. This is one way to approach it for our town, I think, and rather than do it stepwise, make a holistic regulation that really everybody does this together, because I do think we all will have an impact on that water quality. The other part about, I guess the second piece about the cost, I can't really comment on that. We did do a survey of all the septic pumpers. They have capacity to do this. We tried to look into that ahead of time, so we interviewed all of them. So whether that price goes up, I hope not. I don't anticipate that because of this regulation. That may be a different piece of the story. Other questions?
Elizabeth Lowell, Hilltop Place, New London. And I wonder what, if anything, we are doing to encourage the use of anaerobic digesters rather than septic systems.
That's a great question, and that is beyond the scope of this regulation. I don't know. Another way of processing our effluent, and I don't know. I guess as the health officer, I haven't seen very many of those when I'm doing septic inspections and new designs. I haven't seen many of them come forward, but so I don't think we're encouraging them any more than any other design. And I think that's a homeowner preference that may come up in the conversation of septic designs.
Hi, Nick. Doug Holman, 30 Maple Lane. I've got a couple of questions. The first is, I guess I don't understand septic systems because you seem to be implying that a septic tank actually removes phosphates and nitrates?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, you were talking about loading in the ground, regardless of whether phosphates or nitrates go into a septic tank or go into a bleach field, they're still in the groundwater, so pumping the tank has absolutely nothing to do with that. Am I right or wrong?
Well, no, that's not completely correct. If the system is functioning, it's not in failure, right? The effluent is being held and the liquids are coming out into your leach field. The problem becomes when they're in failure, you have your solids actually going into those dispersion pipes, and actually that has a fair amount of nutrients in it and will disperse more readily into the environment.
The exception, not the rule. I mean, it sounded like you were talking about actual infiltration into the groundwater through whether it's a tank or a field, and that's completely different. My second question is, this sounds like a lot for a problem that I'm not sure really exists. Did you do a survey? How often do people in the town of New London pump their tanks?
So we did not survey every person in New London to find out how often they.
Did you just do a sample survey of 10 people, 20 people, and try to figure out how often people are pumping? I mean, I pump mine every couple of years. Everybody I know does the same. Is this a problem looking for a place to happen, or is this really a solution? And then my last question is, who's going to be the poop police? Who's going to make sure this gets this gets enforced? I mean, do we need more bureaucracy in this town? Yeah. And that's my question. And thank you, Nick.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. So the first part is trying to remember all the pieces there. So in terms of how we're going to manage this, so the town has a proposal to look at a new management system, not just for this piece, but for managing additional pieces of everybody's, what is it, the permits and the,
yeah.
You can go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So Doug, this will be managed by the town employees. It'll be part of a new system, hopefully, that we're looking into that's going to manage the permitting process as well. And as Nick said, we're looking at this as an education piece because you are right. The majority of people we do think are pumping their septic systems regularly. We did survey the different pumping companies around town to try to get an idea if they would be able to handle this capacity. And just doing the math, it seems as if a lot of people are already doing this. So, but there are, as Nick said, a lot of people, and and the health officers all around the area are seeing an increase in septic failures. So we're just looking at this as a way to educate everybody in town on the importance of it. It's one thing that we can be in control of to protect our most important resource around here, really, which is our lakes.
So this is, I don't have a mic, but this is gonna lead to now additional septic. This is gonna lead to additional septic system inspections. This is gonna take on a whole life of its own. I mean, without, you're implying that it's more than septic tank. It's gonna go to septic systems. We're gonna have septic inspectors. We're gonna become Hanover or whatever the heck you guys are trying to turn us into.
I guess my comment to that is that we're not really changing our process for inspecting septic systems. This is when there's new construction or there's a known failure, I get called from time to time to go look at these septic systems. If they're in failure, the person has, from my perspective, I see a number of septic failures every year, and those are the ones I'm made aware of because they don't have to go to the town to go through that permitting process. And so for me, I see a portion of the failed systems. And I think the impetus for this really is trying to prevent those failures from happening in the first place. I mean, once a system goes into failure, we're already putting out nutrients into the system that we didn't need to have in that system. And so I'd argue that the hope is by regular pumping and regular inspections, we're preventing the failures from coming up. And in 10 years or whatever, the hope is that the number of failures drops dramatically. That's what we're trying to prevent.
So I think we're going to move on because we have a couple of other big topics, but please, I encourage anybody, and I'm happy to have coffee with you, Doug, to talk about it. Anybody reach out with questions. The draft of the ordinance is on the town website, so please take a look and reach out with any questions. I'm going to move along to Janet, who's going to talk a little bit about some things happening around town.
Okay, good morning. As we moved into discussing the topic of zoning amendments for our community, I want to thank you for your continued engagement. These amendments, which will be presented at the upcoming town meeting, reflect significant discussions about maintaining our community's character and addressing the needs of residents and institutions. There is a proposed zoning amendment for lighting at the Sally Shaw Beach Track and Field. Colby-Sawyer College has requested an amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow lighting on the Sally Shaw Beach Track and Field at the Kelsey Athletic Campus on Siemens Road. Currently, the ordinance prohibits lighting at these fields due to concern about disturbing neighbors. However, after nearly 25 years of field use without lights, the college has determined that lighting is essential to remain competitive with other institutions and to sustain enrollment. Notably, Colby-Sawyer is currently the only college in its division without lighting fields. The college has worked closely with the planning board and interested neighbors to draft an article that carefully balances these needs with community concerns. A consultant from the International Dark Sky Association provided insights into modern lighting options designed to minimize light pollution and impact on nearby properties. The proposal includes the following safeguards. Lights will be turned off promptly after competitions. College staff will use app-based controls to dim and shut off lights remotely. The lighting system will be monitored to ensure it is only used when necessary. If approved, this amendment will allow lighting on the track and field and access roads to the Kelsey Field Athletic Campus, enhancing safety. Importantly, the baseball field and non-turf fields remain without lights. There's another petition zoning amendment for the zoning ordinance. The second proposed amendment involves a petition to rezone approximately 1.44 acres on Main Street. This area includes the property occupied by Angeli and Associates and the front portion of Spring Ledge Farm, which is approximately 160 feet wide from Main Street. Currently zoned to urban residential, the proposed change would rezone it to commercial to better align with existing land uses. It's important to note that the portion of Spring Ledge Farm included in this rezoning is subject to a conservation easement that restricts its use to commercial agricultural activities as they exist today. That ensures that the farm's character and current operations are preserved, even with the rezoning. This amendment seeks to clarify zoning designations and support the continuity of established activities on these properties. Upcoming public voting and hearing will take place in January 14th. We'll have that hearing, and you will vote on this on the ballot vote, and that will be on the same ballot as your the people who are running for office and the school budget. Your engagement is vital in shaping the future of our town. So thank you for your attention and participation this morning. We look forward to working together to address these important issues responsibly and collaboratively. Thank you. Okay, now it's Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see so many faces on a snowy December morning. My name is Ashley Seawold, for those of you that don't know me, and I am here representing the Police Facilities Advisory Committee. I was here back in June, was the last one that we had of these, introducing what we were charged with, and I have got Chief Cobb here and also Tony DeLuzio from Collier's Engineering. Tony was here a year ago this month, was introduced to the town, and he has been a vital partner for us in helping us work through what our options were and ultimately where we've landed. I'm going to walk you through a few slides. I want to be very clear. This is super high level. This isn't a time for us to get into numbers and specifics, but I am happy to tell you that we will spend a good amount of time in the first quarter of Q5 providing information sessions for our taxpayers and residents to come, and that's really when we'll dive into more specifics. Sound good? Wonderful. Okay. So want to just call out some key, our committee members and then also our key partners. So from our town, obviously we've got our select board here, BB, Janet, and Bill. Kim and Adam was also really vital. And Sam also took some time to walk some land as well with Adam and was really helpful in providing us with some information. Committee members, I think we have a good number of committee members here today. Annie, Jim, Jeff, Lieutenant Keith, Bruce, myself, Phil, Maleka, and Susan, and then our external partners, John and Bob from Valley Brunzinger Architects, and then Tony, who's here with us today. All right, now I went through this in June, but just want to remind us all sort of what our charge was when this committee was put together, which was really to evaluate plans, data, and information compiled by the consultants for the purpose of advising the selectmen of our preferred path to take in improving the facilities to be used by the police and dispatchers. The committee will also assist the selectmen in efforts to educate the public on the various options available. When we were first formed, there were really 4 options that we had. We could renovate the existing space, demo the existing space and rebuild, new build on an alternate site, or purchase and renovate another building. We really looked at all 4 of those different options. And with the help of Tony through Collier's and then LaValle Brunzinger, Chief Cobb went through a needs assessment of just really looking at what are the needs of our department now, and what those potential needs are in the next 10, 20 years or so. And through that, we were able to compile a pretty good assessment and then use that to sort of guide us in what we were looking at. All right, we're gonna do a little history lesson here. Did you know that the location of the New London Police Station has remained largely unchanged and unexamined for over a century? So when the Whipple Hall construction plans were created, they did include a lockup space in the basement. That was in 1917. In the 1930s, we hired our first police chief. Before that, we used constables. In the 1970s, it was really the first time that there was mention of potentially looking at the needs of our police station, and that was through the fire department moving from its location on Pleasant Street to where it resides now on Main Street. And that was just that once the fire department got its new building, the town should really start looking at the needs of the police station. In 2000, the town offices moved into the Academy building, and that gave the opportunity for the police station to move upstairs from the basement to where it resides now. But that was really only by happenstance, with the college selling the academy building, the town buying it, moving the town offices over, and then the police station and being able to move up. In 2014, discussions began as part of a larger maintenance project on Whipple Hall. The question of whether the building was still an adequate location for the police and dispatch were raised. In 2018, there was a conversation. At the time, Chief Anderson had asked for a 9th police officer. In that process, in that budgeting process, he was asked, do you want another officer, or would you like a new facility or an upgraded facility? And he said, well, my priority right now is a 9th officer. So there was conversation then. In 2022, a subcommittee formed from the Building and Facilities Committee was put together. They really did the lion's share work of looking at properties all across town properties, privately owned properties. I think the list, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here, was around 35 different properties. And they ultimately came forward with a recommendation that was voted against in the 2024 town meeting. Is that right? I think it was this year's town meeting. Which leads us to where we are now. So after that, the select board created the Police Facilities Advisory Committee, really to re-engage and look at what the options are and build out those plans a little bit more. So we, with our time with LaValle, Brensinger, and Colliers, we, in this needs assessment, we really looked at what's going on with the property now and what do we need in the future. And the current police facility has served the department for decades, but over time the department has outgrown the space, and thus we actually no longer meet industry standards as well. So location, while it is central to town, our police force is typically out on the road anyway. They're not sitting around at the police station waiting for calls. And so they're out and about anyway, but it is nice to have them central to town. They do share a driveway with a private residence. There's no secured area or ability to add on to that space, and it really is in a fishbowl. The Sally Port, which is the garage underneath, is pretty far away from central operations, so knock on wood, God forbid, an emergency happens down there, it's gonna be a long time before somebody can get all the way down there. It is not ADA compliant. The floor-to-ceiling windows facing the town green mean that oftentimes chief and other police members of our police force have people knocking on their office windows. Doors and windows don't meet industry code standards, and then the sprinkler, riser, and critical infrastructure systems are all in the same room downstairs. So we've outgrown the space. It served us well for well over 100 years. And we are excited to share where we looked and what our ultimate recommendation is. So at our inception, several potential locations for the police station were identified. Over the course of several months, the Select Board, Chief Cobb, LaValle, Brensinger, and Colliers collaboratively visited these sites and provided the committee with detailed information about each site. So we had 198 Main Street, the Bonanno property, that's the house, the unoccupied house directly across the street from PC's. 25 Siemens Road, so that's the current location, so we did look at the current location. 176 Main Street, which is the Sigma Data building up on the hill between Sugar River Bank and Bar Harbor Bank. 0 Newport Road, which is also referred to as the Bewley property, which is the plot of land directly across the street from the post office. And then sort of late in the game came 0 Siemens Road, which is the Garvey property, which is just really a stone's throw over the fields here down Siemens Road. From there, we narrowed it down to 3 potentials, 198 Main Street, 0 Newport Road, and Siemens Road. And in that time, we were really asking a lot of questions around, what do we think curb cuttings look like? What do we think on Newport Road the state will want us to do? Well, are they going to want us to put in stoplights? Are they going to have to mandate where the driveway is? There were concerns about folks coming from 89 from the dump coming up into town, and there being traffic on that little knoll coming in and out. We looked at we narrowed it down to those 3: Bonanno, Bewley, and Garvey. ultimately, at the end of the day, last week we all voted after reviewing the site plans for the Garvey property on Siemens Road, and the majority vote was for the Garvey property on Siemens Road. So that is where we are. Again, we are keeping this very high level. We do have some rough numbers, but what we want to do is allow the select board and the budget committee to go into a process of looking at bonds. And then we will be able to communicate a little bit more about what that looks like. And I also understand that the town is still in conversations with the Garvey family in talking about the sale of a few acres of land there. So if we look at it, I just want to be very clear, the building is a very soft rendering. This is not at all what we anticipate the building will look like, and there will be a second version of a committee, a subset of a committee, potentially other folks joining, really to look at what the building will aesthetically look like. So please don't look at that and think that's what it's going to look like. And then that's just the lot. So you can see we are right up in here, and this is the land. Right here. And I believe it's a 20-acre lot. We would not be looking to purchase all 20 acres. We'd really be looking to purchase the amount of acreage that we need for the police station, which is about 3 acres or so. Let me pause there. Tony, Chief, anything that you guys would add? Nothing. Okay.
Leaving you out there.
Taking the easy way out, I see. Okay, so what's next? So this month we have obviously reviewed the properties, finalized the recommendation. We did send a memo to the selectmen late last week with our formal recommendation. And then obviously we're here sharing this information with you guys. Next month, the select board will hopefully finalize 0 Siemens Road by the 9th of January. And again, those conversations with the Cleveland Garvey family are still ongoing. We will start to have information sessions, hopefully at the end of January, that go through March, leading up to town meeting, really to talk about, really get into the details and allow you guys time to process the information and ask the questions. At the end of the day, would we love everybody to be in favor of this? Yes, absolutely. But my goal is to make sure that you guys have all the information you need to make an educated decision. The select board is talking about funding, and they are, I don't want to steal BB's thunder, but I think she's going to talk about this in a minute, but they are likely going to do some information sessions on their own, just around how projects are funded and what it means for taxpayers. So not just about the police station, but anything else that might be on the ballot in March, and just a little education on how things are funded. I find it interesting. I had no idea, and think that you guys will get a lot of value out of it as well. And then they'll be prepping for the budget hearing. Sort of similar in February, except that there is the budget hearing on February 5th. Which hopefully they'll get approval there. They will continue to work on the bond size. We'll do information sessions, they'll do information sessions, and then March will lead right up to town meeting. So that's what I got. Who's got questions? I know they're out there. Yes, Mr. Bowers.
Hi, my name's Bob Bowers. I'm a resident of New Hampshire. And first, I realize the selectmen are doing most of the work on this, but I want to extend my appreciation to Ashley and the committee for your work reviewing the 3 sites proposed by the selectmen. I have some questions, but I first want to make a correction. The Police Station Site Review Committee looked at 32 sites. And they didn't make a recommendation. They specifically didn't want to make a recommendation. Okay. They suggested 2 sites to the selectmen that needed further review and examination and the gathering of information. One was the Bewley site, which was rejected in the 23 meeting when it was brought by petition. And then the selectmen put it back on the table for your committee. The other thought was to look at what was called the Broom property, which is the building near the circle, near the Rotary up on the hill, and that was ostensibly going to be part of your review because part of your review from the selectmen suggested looking at an existing building for renovation. I listened to the audio when a question was asked about what had been done by the architects to look at it, and the audio was indecipherable. But apparently, the selectmen in LaValleys had said don't pursue it. So I don't quite know why they didn't.
I'm happy to answer that right now, Mr. Bowers. If you
Sure.
would. And it's my understanding, folks, please correct me or chime in here. The lot size was too narrow, and it would probably cause us to have to either buy or get some sort of easement in the Bar Harbor parking lot to have land there. And then the building itself was not able to be retrofitted into a police station. It would almost be a tear down just by the nature of how the building was built for its original purpose. Is that? Okay.
Well, I guess I'm missing something here. Perhaps the selectmen didn't tell you this, but the Bar Harbor property next between the parking lot and the Broom property is for sale. And I had long ago mentioned to the selectmen that they should look at that to purchase.
Yeah.
They in fact got an opinion of council that said yes, indeed, they could buy it and annex it. That would almost double the size of the property. And the concept was that you would renovate the building that exists for ordinary office-like purposes, and then you would have that additional space to make more dedicated purposes with a greater security interest, and could have a road. Now, I'm not saying go back and do it all, but
Sure.
it doesn't sound to me as if you went through that process. But turning to what you have done, I'm interested in your comparative analysis of the pros and the cons of each of these sites, and specifically the site review committee, one of the 32 sites they had looked at was this property, and it was rejected. That committee was under the chairmanship of Chief Cobb. Lieutenant Keith was on that committee, and we unanimously agreed that the station should be on the main part of Main Street of town, Newport Road and Main Street. And the chief and lieutenant and the committee felt that was too far away from the main road. So I'm interested in your discussion at the committee about why that's now acceptable. The second part of that is you now have a design for a 2-story building, which you just put up on there. And you just got through talking about the difficulty at Bucher of having something happening in the Sally Port with the operations upstairs, and that's exactly what the new building does. Earlier on in these discussions, there was concern about Bucher because if there was an arrest made at the soft interview room or at dispatch, they would have to get people either through the operations or march them around outside, and that's exactly what you have in this new building.
No, it's actually quite different. So it's how the building would be designed is really the difference here, and that our current facility has been added on and added on and added on to certainly accommodate the needs, but there are safety concerns there, and those safety concerns would be eliminated in the design of this new 2-story building.
Okay, but the operations center and the dispatch and the soft interview are still upstairs, correct?
Yes.
And the processing is still downstairs, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So second, last Monday the selectmen's consultant presented to the committee what he had described as a bare bones estimate for the project of $14,840,200 for construction of a proposed 14,516 square foot building. And you put forth the estimate of site purchase at about $350,000, and Selectman Helm has stated renovation of Bucher for other uses would be about $3,325,000. This total for the project is $18,575,200. Similarly, in February, the consultant gave a high-end cost estimate for a 14,500 square foot building of $17,327,000, which did not include the site development cost. He gave an estimate for site development costs at this site at last Monday's meeting of $2,632,400, along with a site purchase cost of $350,000, which you have noted, and the cost of renovation of Bucher, estimated by Selectman Helm, as $3,325,000. This brings the high-end estimate cost of the project to $23,629,900. This results in an estimate of $18 million to $23,500,000. For both the high-end and low estimates, would you tell us what additional costs there will be, which are not covered by the consultant's estimates, such as a new communications tower? And could you tell us how tall that tower will have to be to connect with the tower on Mount Sunapee, since the site is at a lower elevation? Thank you.
Okay, okay.
So let me say several things. My name was called out there in Bob Bauer's comments. First thing that Ashley said was this was a very high-level discussion this morning. She said we were not going to get into details. So you've gotten into a lot of details, Bob, and that's fine. But this is a process. This is another step in that process that's been going on for several years. And let me just tell you that the selectmen are very, very aware of taxes in this town and the need for considering lots of other priorities. In the coming weeks, we plan to set forth information about the financial dimensions of this project by going step by step through the different things that have to happen. There is considerable value engineering and consideration of size and scope of what we're doing that needs to be taken into consideration. The detailed design will not be done without additional approvals to spend money to do that. Ashley has told you basically it's a two-story building. That's all we can tell you right now, other than some block diagrams. We've done everything that the town meeting asked us to do in March up to this point. The selectmen have included a potential initial bond issue in the FY26 budget that's now being considered by the budget committee, which would be used to finance the acquisition of the property, to engage professional engineering and architectural services to address many of the questions you've just tried to raise, and to prepare the site. Now, on a very personal note, I think about numbers too. Tina and I own our own property here in New London, which is assessed for everybody's benefit. You can see it online at $649,400. My personal expectation, this is just me, is that this bond that we're talking about for the next year will be included in the current budget process and will add, listen carefully to this, 8 cents to the tax rate in FY26, or $52, which I calculate to be about $1 a week, to my property tax bill. I have my property tax bills up here with me, and I'd be happy to check with everybody on that. But I want you to think about whether or not it's worth $1 a week on average. My $649 may be a little higher than some people's, a little lower than some others, to continue to proceed this process that you asked us to do last March, and to take a particularly close look now at this property that John Garvey and Cotton Cleveland have offered to potentially sell to the town. The next step is to find out from them what they're willing to ask for it. This is an updated process that we're going through here this morning, and I think it's inappropriate to start talking about millions of dollars when we're talking about cents on a tax rate for something that will be paid for over a 30-year period.
Just to have a clear understanding, you're talking about, did you say $2 million on the bond issue?
I don't think we're quite there yet. I think that's what they're looking to do at the next budget.
We're in the middle of the process,
We're
Bob.
in the process.
As you know, the budget committee is in the third week of looking at the budget. There will be a budget hearing on February 5th, Ashley.
Yep.
And so this morning is an update, and I think it's a bit disingenuous to start talking about $18 or $23 million. Nobody at this table in this room expects to spend that kind of money. There's a lot of engineering, design, and value considerations still to be considered. We're looking right now at buying a piece of property finally that the town can agree on. We're looking at hiring an architect to do the detailed design work down to where that room is that the soft interviewing is done, to the hallway that leads to the next space, and so on and so forth. This is a process that will evolve at least over another 2 years.
And everybody here will have the opportunity to have all of that information at your fingertips as we lead up to town meeting. So nothing is going to be withheld. We're not trying to be secretive in this. We just want to make sure that the information we present to you is accurate. so that you can make the best decision. I think Dr. Wilson, I think Colin had his hand up first, and then we'll go to you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah.
Bill, or anybody on the select board, just for clarity, so when we talk numbers in January, I think the discussion we had back in March about giving information to the community as to what the tax impact of this project would be it looks to me like it's going to be a 3-year initiative of different bonds. You'll have a bond in fiscal year 26 to deal with property purchases and engineering work and perhaps site development. You'll have a bond in 2027 to deal with the construction of the building. You'll have a bond again in 28 to deal with Bucher repositioning or repurposing. And so what we see in January as input to the decision of the first bond, the entire view, even if it's at a planning purposes, so that we can understand the total impact of those 3 years on taxes and to understand what our debt position looks like against the fiscal policy that's been agreed to by the town. Thank you.
I'll repeat, Colin, it's a long process. We will not have the value engineering done. We will not have the complete design done. We will not have the site built yet, et cetera, et cetera. I think you're right. It's going to be several years. I don't know if it's 1 year, 3 consecutive years, or whatever, but we will continue every time we get together to update people on what we think the range of possible activities will be. The longer we delay on this project, the more it will cost. Tony has told us to expect an increase, an inflationary increase of at least 5% every year that we continue to work on this. So assuming a $10 million project, which is easy for me to multiply by, that's $500,000 a year. So we will have to consider that too when we consider the speed. The purpose this morning is to let you know that we have a site, we have a potentially willing seller, and we think we have a very exciting story to tell about this location, which we will continue at every one of our selectmen's meetings from now until whenever we're done.
I think Dr. Wilson.
Hi, my name is John Wilson. I guess you can hear me. I'm in my 15th year on the budget committee, and I have some budgetary concerns. And when I start this, it might sound like I'm not talking about the police department, but I'm talking about the town overall. The New London Housing Commission consultants have stated that New London needs more workforce and low-cost housing. They also have stated that there's a need for senior housing, which would allow seniors to downsize. The Twin Pines project, known as Long Meadows Commons, would provide 60 units of workforce housing. The Continuum project, known as the New London Place, would provide about 110 units of senior housing. Both projects are unable to proceed because of water constraints. The wells on Colby Point that are the source of the town's water originally had a capacity of 750,000 gallons a day, but now have a capacity of just 2/3 that. And due to the nature of the aquifer that they're in, we'll see further diminishment of capacity. Engineers hired by the Water Precinct have stated that New London should be looking for alternative sources of water. Estimates for this project have been between $8 and $20 million. The fire department needs to build an addition that will accept a new engine, which would be too large to fit in the present garage bay. Estimates for this run from $750,000 to $1 million. Also, the department's annual budget could quickly increase by $1 million as the department transitions to full-time firefighters. If the Bucher building is vacated by police, estimates to repurpose it are $3 to $5 million. New London is a donor town for state school spending. Recent plans by the state to reallocate our part in this funding could well cost us an additional $1.4 million annually. New London is considering a new police station, which when all aspects of the project are considered, could cost $20 million. All of these projects and obligations add up to close to $50 million. The timeline for all this is vague, but the $50 million isn't. The Housing Commission consultants have stated that 30% of the people in the area are burdened by the cost of housing, either rental or ownership. New London is an expensive place to live. Addressing all these items at once would make it impossibly expensive. We are trying to entice workforce to live in New London, but we are presenting them with items that will further increase their cost of living. We need to prioritize, and it seems that water is the natural primary concern that should be addressed. Thank you.
Any other questions? Colin, I saw you raise your hand again. Did you have another question?
Thank you. No, more just a commentary, for whatever it's worth. I think it's important to the town that we understand, even if it's planning numbers. And where I come from, planning numbers are important for resource allocation. Even with planning numbers, we should understand the total cost of a project. It's a conversation we've had in this town for many years now, and the total impact on the tax bill during the course of that project, so that people can be informed when they make that decision. So I understand that the first investment of $2 million is, I'll say $1 a day, whatever it might be. That's okay, but you need to add on top of that for planning purposes. And I think Tony will tell you, for planning purposes, what it will cost to construct the building. For planning purposes, we have a number on what it will take to repurpose Bucher. Add them all up, identify the bond value, identify the impact on the taxes of the total project. That information, in my view, is very important in the first decision in March. Just want to give that commentary. Thank you.
Great. I think we're in alignment there. So I think we're good. And I think a lot of that will be baked out over the course of the next few months leading up to town meeting. So I think we're all in alignment there. Any other questions? Yeah.
Tom Carley, I live on Otterville Road. What I find incredibly frustrating over the last couple of years is the financial analysis, going back to what Colin said, is fragmented and not comprehensive. It's not a couple pennies on your tax bill. Bill's a financial guy. I would say to Bill or ask him, what is the debt service on $14 million? We go out and we bond it at 3.5% over 20 or 30 years. I would submit to you it's $800 to $1 million a year, which is, I think, 10% of our existing budget. And that's layered on top of it. So our tax bills will definitely go up 10% if this police station goes through. Thank you.
Tom, thank you for asking the question in that way. We've done a preliminary look at big numbers without assigning them to any particular project. And the answer to your question is over 30 years, it would add 45 cents to tax rate, given the particulars that you just gave, a particular interest rate, a particular period of time. The amount of money you borrow, the interest rate you borrow at, the length of the borrowing, and the way that you pay it off all are part of that. But the direct answer to your question is 45 cents a year on the tax rate.
So how does that translate into annual debt service? Is it $500,000, $800,000,
approximately $800,000.
And it's only 45 cents.
I'd be happy. It's almost 9:30. I'd be happy to sit down with you with sheets of numbers that we have on that. What we're trying not to do is to say, absolutely, this is going to cost this is going to cost that, it's going to happen in this sequence or that sequence. We're working on it. The water issue, as everybody knows, has added an interesting dimension in recent times because of the contamination on the hospital land. We're working through all of these issues. There are some other alternatives regarding the possible addition to the fire station. We're working on those. The purpose, what we're trying to do today is to tell you we are working on them. We're making progress. What we're really hoping is that you will stand back and think about the work that the advisory committee has done here to come up with this alternative site on Siemens Road. We are not unaware of the numbers. I tried to say that a few minutes ago, but to sit and to suggest that one set of numbers is the answer to everything is not right. But 45 cents is the answer to your question.
I would submit to you, you get up at the town meeting and you say the debt service all in is $600,000 to $800,000. I think people will have absolute sticker shock, but that's just one man's opinion. Thanks.
Are we, I know we're close to time, are we still taking questions? Okay.
Excuse me.
So there are a lot of hands, and it looks like go ahead.
Okay, Mary Rocco, Bunker Road. This is just a quick question about the water again. It's my understanding that Twin Pines and the New London Water Precinct are currently in mediation. They have until the end of December to come to some kind of decision, or it goes back to the Housing Commission. The town, I assume, is also involved in this mediation, and I was wondering if they have any information they could share, or what is your current position right now on the water source. And two, for the new property for the on Siemens Road for the project for a possible police station, what would be their water source? I didn't see anything in any of the documentation.
It is on town water.
So Mary,
And we are currently on town water.
Mary, the answer to your initial comment is it is public knowledge that there's a mediation in process. All of the parties to the mediation are unable to further comment on it.
Okay. I think Doug Homan.
Doug Holman. Just a couple of quick questions and an observation. Ashley, what do you do? Are you an architect or something like that?
No, I am not, Doug. I am in HR.
All right, you sound pretty informed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be an insult. I just was curious about your background. I've just got a couple observations. I noticed there's none of the original committee members are on this committee. Is that right?
Phil Sherman is on this committee, and I believe, Phil, you're in the room. I believe he was part of the first committee as well.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And Lieutenant Keith.
Right. Is Lieutenant Keith, he lives in town, right?
He does, yep.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it.
He also represents New London on the school board.
I was there. I'm probably one of the few people in this room that was there for the meetings when the police station was actually renovated and moved to its current location. So it was more than just moving upstairs from the basement, and I had a lot of familiarity with the basement. Locked in the cell on numerous occasions, voluntarily, not involuntarily. But I was against it. I was vehemently against it, and I spoke about it at those meetings. How it was just a terrible location. How they couldn't come up with a worse facility and in a worse location. You know, it was going to bastardize the lines of the original town hall. You know what? I was wrong. I was wrong because they couldn't have picked a better location for that police department if they tried 20 years after the fact, when we've got school shooters and all the other problems we have. It is dead center and so close to Colby and our middle school or our elementary school that it's at a perfect location. So moving it there has to be a really, really, really underlying reason to move that building from its original location. And not having enough parking is really not a reason, because I think we all know that building beside it could have been bought if some people hadn't queered that deal a year ago when we tried. But anyways, forget that, okay? So I was there. The location has worked out pretty well for us to this point. I want to talk about money. And I hate the 45 cents here or the 10 cents there argument. It's insulting. And I'm sorry, there's no other answer for that, but it's insulting. And this project at $15 million, if that's what it is, or $25 million on the upside, is really going to be closer to $20 to $30 million. Nobody's done a cost of funds analysis. The cost of funds at 4%, I'm glad to hear we can borrow at 3.5%, but the cost of funds at 4% is almost $7 million in 20 years. If we're going to borrow for 30 years, you're now closing in on $8.5 or $9 million for a total cost of funds. That's the money that we've got to pay in interest. I'm not talking about paying for the building. I'm talking about just interest. So let's not, I can't think of any other word than insulting to sit here and have a big picture discussion about a $30 million expenditure that the select board doesn't want to talk about. I mean, this is going to be a bait and switch. I know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be, let's just buy the property and we'll get started. Then it's going to be, let's do a study and we'll see where it leads us. And then it's going to be, let's build a police station. You can just see the natural progression of this. I would say, stop right now before we go down this road. We've got, Colin, John did a great job of letting you know the things and the expenses that we've got coming. I think water is foundational and fundamental. I hear the argument it's a precinct, it's not ours. No, it's not. It's New London's problem. We all know it. Just because there's a few houses in Springfield that are on it, it's New London's problem, and we don't have any water. And it should be what the selectmen are talking about, not right now, not a $30 million boondoggle in a wetland on Siemens Road. Thank you for listening.
I think it's really an unfortunate view to say that what we're saying is this is the end of the conversation. We are very much going to continue to provide you with more and more information as we continue this process. So that's really unfortunate.
Doug, I'm sorry that I've insulted you. This is supposed to be a civil discussion. I'm sorry I've insulted you.
I apologize if
I'm sorry I insulted you. But this is a civil discussion.
I think, can we do one more and then move on I think we are over time. I need to get to work. Yes.
I'm Paula Meinert. I live on Barrett Road. And can you hear me now?
Oh, yep.
Okay. I live on Barrett Road, and I'm concerned about some of the same issues that have been raised, which I think the main focus should be water. Working on that, and also taking into account the other upcoming expenses that, other than the police station, there's the fire department, there's some more, and I think we need to take the long view, because also the town may be developed in other ways, and more development, which will mean more requirements for water, and I really think that should be the main focus.
Thank you. Okay, I think just very quickly while I have the mic, Bill's gonna roll his eyes at me. I do just very quickly want to thank the Cleveland and Garvey family. They have continued for decades to come from a place of yes and being asked to have a seat at the table to solution for the needs of this community. This year alone, we all know they're in talks with the water precinct. They're in talks with the town for the police station. I would argue that David's lit tree in the field is also very much a need of our community. But we are really riding the coattails of work that not only the Clevelands, but like-minded families and individuals have done for decades and are continuing to do, but those coattails are getting shorter and shorter by nature. And so I am excited to see more people come from a place of yes in trying to solution. That doesn't always mean that something's going to end up being a yes, but coming from a place of yes and wanting to solution, magic happens when people come from a place of yes. So that's all I'll say. Thank you guys very much.
So, first of all, thank you all for your comments and for coming. Believe it or not, I tried to say this earlier, we are looking at all these other topics. Also, the focus of this morning's was on the police facility issue, because we're moving forward on that particular one right now, but we have not in any way, shape, or form ignored all of the other issues that you have raised. From a timing point of view, let me just say that at the Selectmen's meeting this Thursday night, the 19th, we will be finalizing the septic ordinance, I believe. So if you have further comments on the septic ordinance, Thursday night would be an excellent time to come and chat with the Selectmen about that. Janet mentioned the zoning hearing on the 14th of January. That'll be an important time if you have any views on either the Kelsey Field lights or the petition article regarding the rezoning of the small amount of land on Main Street. And then we've also mentioned today the budget hearing on the 5th of February, which is the time when the Budget Committee will be looking for final input in terms of the budget that we presented at town meeting. Obviously, we all have an opportunity to change that budget at town meeting also, but generally speaking, I think history shows that if it gets through the budget hearing, it gets through town meeting. Also, we will continue to do meetings like this. They are helpful. We get more input than we get simply on Thursday nights. I think it's fair to say. So I want to thank you all for coming out. I want to particularly thank the advisory committee. The 9 people that worked on that have worked very hard. Tony, I want to thank you for a year's work with us. And Chief, I want to thank you for hanging in there. So everybody, we're going to be around, chat afterwards for people who want to chat. But have a very happy holidays, and probably see you at one or more of these meetings in the next couple of months. Thanks very much for coming.